Today from the Global Lane, the world's worst persecutors of Christians. The country's topping this year's Open Doors list.
Some of these places where it is darkest and most difficult to be a Christian, the church is not being thwarted and continues to rise and to be the hands and feet of Christ, even in those most difficult contexts.
Mark Zuckerberg turnaround. No more third-party fact-checking at Facebook and Instagram.
We've seen the past 4+ years, government coming in heavy-handed, telling the company that they need to do a better job of taking down content. Americans grew sick and tired of that.
Is climate change the cause of the California wildfires?
That's positively false. If you look at the facts, the science, and the data, it's not supported at all.
And the good, bad, and ugly of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. And it's all right here on the Global Lane. The persecution of Christians worldwide is worsening. Recent data from Open Doors U.S. highlights an alarming rise in violent religious persecution. 15 million more Christians faced high levels of persecution last year compared to 2023. This means that approximately 338 million followers of Jesus, about 1 in 7 globally, suffer for their faith. Well, joining us to share his findings from the annual World Watch list is Open Doors U.S. CEO Ryan Brown. Ryan, it's good to talk to you again. So this is a troubling trend. Persecution is getting worse for Christians worldwide. Which country tops the list this year and why?
Yeah, top of the list this year is once again North Korea. It's a spot that they've occupied for over 20 of the 30+ years that this list has been put out. Reason for that is it continues that the authoritarian regime just continues to see the expression of Christian belief as a threat to the rule of the state. And so they continue to crack down. Most would have considered them having no additional headroom in their score, but that score continued to increase this year as we saw that persecution continuing to be expressed with additional aspects of violence.
Well, we expect there are probably estimate probably about 400,000 Christians there. How many do you think are in prison right now? And what are they facing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think I would venture the specific number right now. I do know what many of them are facing, though, and those are incredible hardships in these work camps. We're able to minister to about 100,000 of those believers in North Korea, and we continue to lift them up in prayer and provide that practical support.
And the top 5 worst persecutors after North Korea: Somalia, Yemen, Libya, and Sudan, all Islamic countries, I might add. Sudan was number 8 out of 50 in the 2024 report, but for 2025, it jumped to number 5. So tell us why. What's happening to Christians in Sudan?
Yeah, Sudan continues to be confronted with civil war, continues to endure that. And Sudan is an incredibly difficult place to live in so many parts of the country already. For Christians, however, it is especially difficult. Often in the instability, they become targeted. They become targeted as means by which that instability can be perpetuated, that they continue to be victims of assault and those types of things. In other contexts, the Christians are in, for those who are receiving aid, can often be overlooked in the distribution of that aid. Folks can deny Christians access to some of those same services that other people in the country are receiving.
Yeah, they're marginalized and treated as less of a person. 1 year ago,
Absolutely.
When we discussed the 2024 list, we talked about Yemen. It was number 5 last year. This year, it's number 3. So tell us about the Christian community there, and why is persecution worsening for them?
That is, there are conflicting powers that are grappling for control in Yemen. And anytime you have that type of dynamic, it creates these vacuums of power and control throughout the country. And the instability dynamic is one that is certainly impacting Christians in Yemen.
Well, what other countries, Ryan, are most concerning? Any surprises?
Yeah, I think that one of the countries that we often look at and continues to present challenges, it would be China. In years past, we've talked about how they continue to lead the trend in that idea of digital surveillance and monitoring the church there. Part of that effort over the last couple of years has seen a ramp up in their intentionality in really seeking to stamp out the unregistered or underground churches in the area. Many know of the underground churches in China, and some of these have become quite large and have had quite a bit of influence. But the government there is increasingly cracking down on those unregistered churches. The registered churches, they are continuing to demonstrate increased reach into the messaging, into ideological messaging and the Communist Party that they are making sure is present within those congregations.
And quickly, how should we pray for our brothers and sisters in Christ at this time?
I think that we can continue to pray for wisdom and discernment. The thing that they are so often asking us to lift them up in prayer for is that they would not falter or fail in their testimony. The Christians that we engage with, by and large, are not asking for the persecution to end. They're not asking to be pulled out from under the persecution, but they are desiring to be faithful witnesses of the love of Jesus Christ, even within the context of their persecution. Incredible things are happening there. I think that that the increase of persecution is also a testament to the fact that Christ's church is growing. The Church of God is growing around the globe in some of these places where it is darkest and most difficult to be a Christian. The church is not being thwarted and continues to rise and to be the hands and feet of Christ, even in those most difficult of contexts.
Okay, stronger backs for carrying their crosses. Ryan Brown,
Amen.
CEO of Open Doors U.S., thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you.
It's a good one.
On the home front, protecting free speech. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg recently announced he'll end third-party fact-checking programs on his social media platforms. But can he be trusted to keep his word in the long term? Old censorship habits may be hard to break. So what needs to be done to safeguard and protect free speech on Meta and other social media platforms? Well, here to share her thoughts is Amy Boss. She's NetChoice Director of State and Federal Affairs. Amy, I must point out that the First Amendment applies to government restricting free speech, not corporations. So in the past, Zuckerberg denied censoring conservative speech. Now he's made an admission that it did happen. So what do you make of this Zuckerberg turnaround? Would it have happened, you think, if Trump had not won the election?
So thanks so much for having me. I think this announcement from Mark Zuckerberg last week is really exciting. One, it's Meta essentially returning to its roots. We've seen the past 4+ years, government coming in heavy-handed, telling the company that they need to do a better job of taking down content. Americans grew sick and tired of that. They've demanded that the government get out of the speech business. And I think that's what you see here. You see Zuckerberg really announcing a recommitment to free speech principles. They're going to remove or eliminate the fact-checking program. They're going to allow topics, previously controversial topics, to be discussed. I think this is a welcome change, and it's really showing, it's really a trend that we're seeing in the social media space. Started with X and Elon Musk taking over there, but it's really being driven by consumers as well.
Well, here's what Mark Zuckerberg recently told Joe Rogan about the political pressure from the Biden administration to censor Meta content.
Basically, these people from the Biden administration would call up our team and scream at them and curse. And it's like, these documents it's all kind of out there. And basically it just got to this point where we were like, no, we're not gonna take down things that are true.
So, Amy, what do you expect the incoming Trump administration and Congress will do to prevent government officials from pressuring social media platforms to censor political or controversial speech?
Sure. So there's definitely action Congress can and should take. And the first on that list is reintroducing and passing what's called the Protecting Speech from Government Interference Act. This would make it illegal for government employees to coerce social media companies for political purposes. This bill, it's been around during the last Congress. It passed the House along party lines. Unfortunately, Republicans supported and Democrats opposed. This really should not be a partisan issue. The government must get out of the speech business, and I think this bill is a great first start to prevent that censorship that you spoke of.
Well, is there any role for the government to have? I mean, how about legislation to prohibit censorship or require free speech on social media platforms?
Sure. It's a little tricky when you're talking about telling platforms what content they must keep up or what content they should take down. Really, what we're seeing with this announcement, this is being driven by the market and by consumers. So we need to get rid of that heavy-handed approach. Again, government is a little limited in what they can tell private companies to do, but it's refreshing to see that that once controversial topics, that we can be able to talk about them. There are, of course, companies still have their terms of service, their rules for their specific platforms. But again, when the government steps in and tells companies what to do, that's where we see those huge First Amendment problems.
Yes, I think I've heard Elon Musk say more content, not less, more speech, not less. So what about efforts to protect? How about efforts to protect children, minors from violent and sexual content, also from predators, child predators online? What's likely to be done there?
Absolutely. So this is a topic that has come up not only before Congress, but states are taking a really close look at it too. And I think you get into some of those same censorship concerns. You don't want the government to come in heavy-handed and determine for kids and for parents, really, what content is harmful or not harmful. I think we need to be really careful when we're asking the government to intervene in those areas. But there are steps that Congress can take, and we need to better empower parents with the parental tools that are available. We need to educate young people and parents, quite frankly, how to use the internet safely, navigate safely. So those are some of the efforts that we've been championing. I would also mention we need to hold bad actors accountable. We see all too often reports going into NCMEC detailing child sexual abuse content that really needs to be taken down, and there just aren't enough resources there. So there's also legislation in Congress called the Invest in Kid Safety Act that would put additional funds towards that effort. And
quickly, I've got to ask you to weigh in on the TikTok ban. Is it set to happen? I think it will happen unless the Supreme Court steps in or ByteDance sells the company by January 19th. So ByteDance warns if the U.S. government can do this to TikTok, it can do it to any company. So your thoughts briefly.
Yeah, I tuned a little bit into the oral arguments the other day. The Supreme Court generally gives Congress some deference here. So hate to make a prediction here. We saw President Trump weighing in, saying we may need more time to talk this through. So we're keeping a close eye on it. But yeah, it will be interesting to see where the court lands on this one. Okay, Amy Boss of NetChoice, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
California's raging wildfires. A rising chorus of voices have appeared in the media, blaming climate change for the loss of life and devastation. Here to set us straight is the director of the CO2 Coalition, Gregory Wrightstone. Greg, it's good to talk with you again, so please share your thoughts with us on these claims that the out-of-control, destructive wildfires in Southern California are the result of climate change.
Well, that's positively false. And what they're claiming is because of man-made warming from too much CO2 in our emissions, that we're seeing unusual temperature increases and drought, and that's leading to these fires in California. But if you look at the facts, the science, and the data, that just it's not supported at all. And in fact, we just looked at these fires started on January 9th, and we went back to 1943 and looked at the 30-day period from December 9th to January 9th over the last 60 years and found that actually precipitation has been increasing, not decreasing, during that 30-day period. We also see that this claim of drying up of California, we've seen 2 years of what's unusual or the rainfall that's occurred over the preceding year and a half or 2 years. And what that has done is driven a large increase in grasses and shrubs and arroyo that are now, once they dry out, this is just like they're waiting for a spark to go up. So we have a huge amount of the grasses, and the dryness we've seen recently is really just a return to the normal conditions of an arid Southern California. What's been unusual has been the rainfall of the last year and a half or 2 years. And so when they claim about a man-made driven fires, it's partially man-made, but it's not climate change. The problems we have are management. We see it when we go into forests, it's forest management. We see in these suburban and urban areas, it's managing the grasses and shrubs in that area to keep the fire from spreading so quickly. The leading cause of this that exacerbated this were, of course, the Santa Ana winds that reached close to 100 miles an hour at its peak, which might be the highest wind speed we've seen in 10 years in that area. So even if they had the water available to fight them, winds at that speed would be nearly impossible to stop. And we've just published a commentary this morning on our website, the CO2coalition.org, by our fire expert, Jim Steele, who lives in San Diego. He's a true California fire expert. He talks a lot about 1-hour fuels and 10-hour fuels. And these 1-hour fuels are the grasses. According to him, we could have a rainfall in the morning, and then when these Santa Ana winds come through, it can dry those grasses and shrubs out within 60 minutes or less. And it's ready to go up in flames, even if you had rained 60 minutes prior. He also talks about 10-hour fuels, which are the bigger branches and things like that. But again, these can dry out in less than a day with these Santa Ana winds. And so there's really nothing related to climate change. In fact, if you look at the CAL FIRE numbers, which I did, CAL FIRE numbers number of fires in California has been declining. And we see that across the United States. We see continental United States wildfires, both area burned and number of fires has decreased over the last 90 years. And that's not something they put out there. If you go to the National Interagency Fire Center, they'll show you a chart from 1983 on and claim of an increase. What they do is hide the data. They have data going back to 1926. They don't show that. Why? Because there were 5 times as many acres burned and 5 times as many fires as there have been in the last several decades.
Well, let's talk about the rest of the nation then, because at the same time, we've seen heavy snow in the mountains, colder temperatures earlier this winter season in many places across the country, including the South. So would that suggest global cooling? A UCLA study, remember a UCLA study several years ago suggested global warming is causing a cooling in the stratosphere. So what's the truth here?
Well, you got to get your head right, Gary, because you haven't caught on to the latest lingo, and that is climate whiplash. That climate change induced by our emissions of CO2 is leading to these rapid changes from high temperatures to very low temperatures and a lot of rainfall to no rainfall. I read about this for the first time last week, climate whiplash, and it's because of our emissions of CO2. But Gary, the true story is that my latest book is A Very Convenient Warming, and in it I capture that by almost every metric, Earth's ecosystems are thriving and prospering, and the human condition is improving. And that's because of warming and more CO2. We should celebrate that. Here at the CO2 Coalition, our unofficial motto is, we love CO2 and so should you. There are a lot of good things that are associated with increasing carbon dioxide.
Okay, Gregory Wrightstone, CO2 Coalition Director. As always, It's good to talk to you. Thank you for setting us straight.
Thank you.
As news emerged of a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, the Wall Street Journal reported that the younger brother of deceased Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar has become the new head of the group. This development indicates that Hamas is far from being extinguished. It is likely to regroup and reconstitute itself during the ceasefire, meaning the threat to Israeli security will persist for years to come. The positive side of a ceasefire is the release of American and Israeli hostages. The downside? Hamas now has time to rearm, recruit, and reorganize new forces. Also freed Hamas prisoners, some of whom participated in the October 7th attack, will be free to kill more Jews. A ceasefire cannot be allowed to lead to an end to this war, with Hamas remaining in control of the Gaza Strip. Israel must remain committed to total victory with the defeat of the Hamas terror group. At his confirmation hearing, Donald Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, was asked to weigh in on Israel's war against Hamas.
I support Israel destroying and killing every last member of Hamas.
Let's not forget that it was Donald Trump's threat stating that all hell will break loose if Hamas did not release the hostages that led to this deal. On the northern front, Israel has significantly weakened Hezbollah, and unlike his predecessors, new Lebanese President Joseph Aoun has pledged to oppose Hezbollah militarily. The Lebanese army will take action to disarm Hezbollah and other militia groups, something that was promised but never delivered when Israel withdrew from Lebanon in 2006. With Hezbollah weakened, the Lebanese army is now positioned to fulfill that commitment and strengthen its national force. However, the real battle ahead is not fought with guns and bullets. The more challenging fight is to win over the hearts and minds of young Lebanese and Palestinians, teaching them to tolerate non-Muslims and replace anti-Semitism and hate with love for their neighbors. Without this effort, another Yahya Sinwar or Hassan Nasrallah will emerge to fill the void left by fallen leaders. Yes, Israel can eliminate every member of Hamas and install a friendly, secular government in Gaza. But until Islamic and international leaders address the heart of the conflict, the ideology of hate and terror, there will always be another Hamas or Hezbollah rising to terrorize the people of the Middle East and the world. Well, that's it today from the Global Lane. Until next time, be blessed.